Good evening, everyone. Just want to thank the elders for asking me to be before you this evening. But most of all, I'm grateful that God trusts me to be before you guys this evening. When I received the phone call Friday afternoon saying, Cortland, could you assist with delivering a message? The first answer was yes, sure. Which lesson? And they said you can take morning or evening, so I chose the evening message. So my wife asked me today earlier, do you have a title or is there a theme or something about what are you going to talk about tonight? And I said, no, there isn't. But the first thing I did when Glenn called me, I prayed to God saying, you want me to speak before the flock? What would you like me to talk about? What do you feel that's relevant? Or what would you like me to say? Because it's not my words, it's his word. And the word that just kept going through my mind was the word time. Time just kept resonating within my brain, going back and forth. So the crux of everything you hear this evening will be about time and how we use our time. So as I look out in the audience today, I see some young men, I see some young teenagers. And so for your time right now, you may be thinking like, I can't wait till I get out of school. I can't wait till I get my first car or get a job, get away from mom and dad, have my own apartment or place and be on my own. For those that are a little bit older than the teenagers, it's like, I'm glad that I'm out the house. It's been a long time. I'm out of high school. I'm doing my own thing, or maybe I'm waiting to graduate from high school to do my own thing. Now, for those of us that are much older, we look at time a little bit differently. We say, wow, time is going by fast. It just seemed like we just celebrated a holiday and we're right back at the same holiday again. Within our society and culture, we finish one holiday before we even finish that holiday. There's 2 more holidays in front that's already been showcased in the retail stores. If you guys didn't notice, coming out of Thanksgiving, you already saw gifts for December are the theme, but they already talking about Valentine's Day. And Easter is already out there in the shelves too. So for us that's older, we're going like, boy, time is moving by fast. But it's the same amount of time that we had when we were young. When I was younger, I remember being at my grandparents' place, looking up at the clouds, going like, oh, those clouds move by really slow. Can't wait till I get older. And then when I got older, I said, I can't wait till I get my first car or move out and do what I want to do. But now since I'm this age, I'm going like, wish I could slow this time down, but it's still the same amount of time that we all get. So with that being said, and since that's what I felt God wanted me to talk about, I wanted to ask you, what do we do with the time that it's allotted to us each and every day? We get the same amount of time from the time we wake up till the time we go to sleep. And if we're granted another day, we get the same allotted amount of time. So where I work at, the folks there know that I go to church and I believe in Jesus. So in our workplace, sometimes people say you shouldn't talk about religion or Bible or things like that. But lucky enough, we respect everybody's opinion and allow people to have whatever dialogue or conversation they may want to have. And within that, we have respect. We may not agree with them, but we still can have an open conversation. So I was reflecting on last week on the 3 interactions that I had with 3 individuals at work. One is my boss. If you work for a corporation or a company, there's always somebody above you. And if you're self-employed, there's always somebody else above you called the government. So either way, I have to deal with both of them, the government and my boss in the industry that I'm in. So with my boss over these past probably 3 to 4 years, I said, hey, why don't you come to church? Why don't you come and visit where I attend church? And he's always declined that. So through the events that's happened over the past couple of weeks, I said, the door is always open. We meet on Rucker, just north of Guadalupe. We'd be glad to have you there. And his reply is always, well, when I see somebody walk on water, I'll show up. And I said, well, you already know Jesus walked on water. He said, yeah, I read that. I saw that. I said, okay, great. Which told me that he at least read the Bible, or he knows some scripture because he could identify with that. Now, you just told me, you said if you could see somebody walk on water outside of Jesus, you would attend. I said, you're in great luck. Another person has walked on water. His name was Peter. He's going, what? Yep, he walked on water when Jesus was walking on water. You can read that in the book. And he's going, wait a minute. I want to get somebody in my time. not that old time stuff. I said, well, you know that's not going to happen. You're not going. Christ is not going to come down here and walk on water just for you or have somebody else do that for you. But take a look at your life. Look at your success. Look at what you have attained in your lifetime. Look at the age you're at. You're compensated well. Who do you think's controlling all that? Who do you think put you in the position that you're in to be my boss and given us this opportunity to talk about the Bible again? I said, that's God. He says, well, you know, it might be. You could have some facts there, and you may be telling me the truth. And I said, well, I know you like to read. I know you like to study. Continue studying the book. But I want to pose one other thing to you, because we were talking about the social events over the past couple of weeks. As we know, some people passed away. I said, wouldn't it be better if you believe or committed yourself to the Lord instead of wondering if it's true? Because if something does happen to you, then you go to that other place. Oh, you mean the place, hell? You mean be in pain and torment? Yeah, that place. He says, and that's fear then. He says, am I supposed to believe out of fear? I said, well, we should fear God. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But you will grow into an appreciation where your fear will turn over into love, and you do it out of respect, and you do it because you know it's the right thing. But we should always fear God. Well, he says, well then, I read that there was some guy on the cross next to Christ, and he looked over and said, hey, forgive me. I said, that was back then. But there's a few extra steps along the way now. You can't wait till the last minute. What are you going to do if your day comes? Are you going to go, uh-oh? I guess everything Cortland was saying, or those along the way, there was some fact to that. That'd be too late. He says, well, I'll give it some thought, some consideration. I said, the door is always open for you, because we would love to have you. Because I know he likes to learn and expand and gain additional knowledge. So it's in God's hands. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop, because my time is in the present to keep bringing that message or bringing whatever bits and pieces to him, and hopefully the seed takes. So after I came out of that meeting with my boss, one of my peers was next to me and said, oh, I saw you had a meeting with the boss. What were you guys talking about, or what's up? Because everybody likes to know what's going on within the workplace. I said, oh, we were just finished doing my annual review from last year and this and that. And I said, it was excellent. But we were talking about the Bible. And he's going, oh, how'd that go for you? I said, well, he's still thinking about it. He wants to see somebody walk on water. And I said, how are you doing? He says, well, I don't believe in the Bible anymore. And I go, what? I said, I thought for sure you did. You know, you got a wife, you have 2 kids. From the way you act and the way you respond and the way we get along, it seems like that was part of your life. And he says, well, yes, it was. But I don't believe in it anymore. And I'm going like, well, why not? Because I was somewhat stunned and shocked. He says, well, I was Protestant at one time. Then I became Mormon because my wife is Mormon. And then I've read Islam, and I read Catholicism, and I've read Buddhism. I said, boy, you've done a lot of reading and studying, so why'd you step away? He says, well, God just won't let life events happen to good people. I just don't understand why this life event that happened to me, why he would allow it to happen. Just seems unfair. And if God was a love of compassion and kindness like you read in the book, he wouldn't allow it to happen. I didn't know what happened, but he let it slip out. That is, him and his wife went through a life event from a pregnancy. And I said, I'm sorry to hear that. I said, some things aren't explained, but God still loves you. And there's a reason why certain things happen, but we may not understand, but he's there for you. His arms are always wide open. Well, I just don't know. It just doesn't make sense why he would allow something like that to happen. I understand. I can't explain that either, but let's take a look at your present state. You got a wife, 2 sons. You always talk about them, very proud of your family, and look at your position with the company. A lot of good things are happening for you. All I ask is that don't give up, keep reading the book. He says, well, how do you know which book is right now? Because they all say different things, but they're similar. I said, yes, they're similar, but you know, they always come back to one book, and one book stays constant. Open up your heart and feel what you felt before when you had that relationship with God. Because this is your time, and you are the head of your house, so let your time reflect upon that. So that stopped at a positive conversation, which was good. And as A third person I would like to share with you about time is a person that's one of my associates that actually supports me. She was Catholic. Now I think she's Protestant or Lutheran now, because we're always talking about how it's always in God's hands. And you might ask, you probably can relate to this, is that how many of you have ever bought a plant or something and it looks fabulous and you can't wait to put it into your house? Or you put a seed in the ground and you watch it growing. And as it's growing, you go like, this just looks great. But then when it starts to struggle or a leaf dies and it starts getting scrawnier and scrawnier, we put a lot of effort and time to say, I can bring it back. I can revive this plant. Maybe if I move it over here in front of the window or give it more fertilizer or nutrient or care or talk to it, it'll flourish and be back to its glorious state from the day that I bought it. Sometimes we hold on to it till it's dead, or we can say, well, it's something's still going to come out of the ground. There'll be a sprout. So that's my relationship with this person at work, is because I know she has all these various interactions with religion, and I'm always reiterating saying, well, just keep studying the book, keep studying the book, because I know there's a passion and there's a foundation there that she knows God is controlling everything. So with those interactions and looking back at the word time in the workplace, we're there, all of us sit in front of computers all day long, 8-10 hours a day. I have 4 monitors in front of me. Some people have 2, some have 3. But to break up the day, people are looking at what's on those monitors. It could be Google, it could be AOL, Yahoo, CNN, Fox News, ABC, CBS News, all the stuff that's out there, you know, just to break up some of their day, which I don't mind because it keeps them in a positive state. But when the phones ring or whatever, they're able to take care of the clients. So now we're talking about the things that's going on in our world. That takes up a lot of time. When we come here on Sunday, Wednesday, or Sunday evening, all that time we spend hearing all the stuff in social media. Biggest thing out there in the headline is the virus. You can go from here to here with the virus. Past couple of weeks, they said if you feel sick, get an antigen test. You know, you can test yourself at home now. If you're concerned about that, you can call your doctor, your physician, your professional care provider, and get the next level test, a PCR test. 2 weeks go by, the news changes again. Well, don't do the test on the first day, do the test on the 5th day. But the first test, which you do on yourself, has a lower positivity rate as far as being accurate versus the one you do at the doctor's, trust the one that's less accurate than the one that is more accurate. We're going like, what is going on? The news keeps changing constantly on this virus. So now we're up to this new virus that begins with the O, because they're using the Greek alphabet. And granted, it started not in America, but in another country. But we're just waiting for the next virus. And they already started identifying, we got another virus coming out. But they didn't want to name it yet. I'm going like, well, why not? What are you holding back for? We know it's just going to keep growing. It keeps changing names. And then you got one where they just put 2 viruses together, you know, Florona, the flu and the virus. And we're just going, this is get goofier every single day. So we laugh about stuff like that because there's no consistency with it. So where I work at, almost 5,000 people can show up on campus. We send them all back home, work from home, because corporate America wants to make sure they're doing the right thing to protect everybody in that time. So every week goes by within the time frame we're working within, waiting for what the next news is going to be. Then we look at other social events. We can look at our country, all the different dynamics and drama that goes on there, how much money it's spending, how much money we don't have. And we go like, well, we're sure say yes to a lot of stuff with no money. I wish I had that type of bank account. And I'm in the financial world. I'm going, it doesn't work like that in the real world, but I guess it works like that if you're in politics. You can just spend, spend, spend. Then over the past couple of weeks, we saw people in the entertainment field, or people that may be in the sports field. Some of them passed away because it was their time. And we could identify, say, oh, I remember when that person did that, or I remember what they did here that delighted us or entertained us. And we talking about, oh, that seemed like a real long life. Well, that person lived that long, that's great. They had a full life. But what did they do with the time that was allotted to them? And then we can see people in the sports industry. Gifted, we watch the amazing feats that they can do. Sometimes they walk away from their contracts. Sometimes they have a meltdown. And we go, what's going on there? It doesn't make sense. because everybody's striving to get to that level of success from a society standpoint. And then we'll come down and there's the virus again. Virus at the top, virus at the bottom. And then we'll see things that's saying, well, you should get 2 shots, 3 shots. We don't know about 4, but some countries are doing 4. We don't know what age you should get the shots at. We're just saying, why we just all just get dipped and just see what happens afterwards? Because it's going to keep changing. So after we have these dialogues all week long, as you can see, a lot of time is spent to that. And my reply to some of that is we just got to trust God. It's all in God's hands. Everything that's going on has happened before. I just think the people that are managing all this today just haven't studied the Bible enough to know that it has happened before. They don't know how to relate or how to make decisions without impacting the masses, without going into panic mode. So reflecting on that, I tried to see how could I tie all this back to the Bible or to the scriptures. So from praying, I said, well, let me look and see what's in the book that talks about some of the things that we've been talking about at the workplace or the interactions that I may have had. So when it comes to my boss, having these conversations over again, inviting him to come here to worship with us, the 2 things that popped up was, first was Philip with the Ethiopian eunuch. That time was there. He had to be ready to be able to speak or answer those questions when he was talking to the eunuch. When the eunuch said, here's water, what's stopping us? What would happen if he didn't take that moment in time and follow through with that? How would that have to change things? We can take a look at Peter. When he went, I think it was Cornelius or to the centurion, when he was requested to go there, he was afraid. But that was his time to go there and speak and share the good news about Christ, because that person heard about it. And we saw the outcome of that. His whole family, his servants, and everybody was baptized and accepted Christ, that good news. So we have to be ready in our time all the time. But then I was going like, what else can I share with you to value your time since I have this time before you? And for some reason, I went to Ecclesiastes. And I started with chapter 4, and I just kept reading and reading all the way till chapter 12. And one thing that came to mind was, I said, there's a lot of good stuff in here. I sounded like Sean. There's a lot of good stuff in here. And granted, all of you have probably read Ecclesiastes time and time again. So I do want to read chapter 4 to you, a few verses from chapter 8, and then chapter number 12. So if you want to go to Ecclesiastes chapter 4, we'll start with the first verse. And I just thought this really emphasized how time is and how maybe we could take a step back and analyze ourselves. How do we use the time that's given to us? Again, I looked up and saw the oppressed that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they had no comforter. Power was on their side, the sign of the oppressor, and they had no comforter. And I declared that the dead who were already dead are happier than the living who are still alive. But better than both is the one who has never been born, who has not seen the evil that is not done under the sun. And I saw that all the toil and all the achievement springs from the person's envy of others. This too is meaningless, and chasing after the wind. Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. Better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toils chasing after the wind. Again, I saw something meaningless and under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither a son nor a brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of the enjoyment? This too is meaningless and miserable, is a miserable business. 2 are better than 1, because they have good to return to their labor. If either of them fall down, one can help the other one up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? The one may be empowered, 2 can defend themselves, A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Better a poor but wise youth than an old fool, foolish king who is no longer known to heed a warning. The youth may have come from prison of the kingship, or he may have been born in poverty within the kingdom. I saw that who lived and walked under the sun followed the youth and the king's successor. There was no end to all the people who were before him, but those who came later were not pleased with the successor. This too is all meaningless, chasing after the wind. And then in Ecclesiastes chapter number 8, starting with the first verse. Who is like the wise, who knows the explanation of things? A person's wisdom brightens their face, and changes is hard appearance. Obey the king's command, I say, because you took an oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Do not stand up for a bad cause, for he will do whatever he pleases, since the king's word is supreme. Who can say to him, what are you doing? Whoever obeys his command will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter, though a person may be weighed down by the misery. Since no one knows the future, no one can tell someone else what is to come. No one has the power over the wind to contain it. No one has the power over time of their death. So when I got to that verse, I was reflecting, that popped in my head some of these commercials I've seen over the holidays. You guys may have seen them. Polar bears are on TV. There's a big polar bear, which is a mama polar bear, a couple of cubs sitting on a piece of ice. And the commercial says, please send me $19.95 a month so we can protect the habitat of the polar bears. I'm asking myself, when did we as a human society learn how to build ice caps to protect polar bears? Those were created by God. And these bears are floating out in the ocean on a piece of ice in a commercial, but for $19.99 a month, I guess we can make ice so they can all live free and be happy. I like polar bears, but I know I can't make ice. I was just amazed that somebody didn't put that out there. There's probably a lot of people that buy into that. The other commercial that gets me, which is sad at one point, that we as a society or as a human race, we haven't figured it out yet. They show the kid who hasn't had enough food. They may be starving or emaciated. And they say for $19.95 a month, your gift of love can help restore this person back to a healthy life. Maybe in this country, but they normally are talking about what we call a third world country, to give them that food or sustenance. Where I work at, we volunteer time and time again at a place in Tempe called Feed My Starving Children. They make bags of food, which has rice, soy, some vegetables, this is all dried products, and some flavoring, but it only costs $0.25 a bag. And so for a box of 30, and they show you all these videos, here's this person, here's what they look like today. 3 months later, here's what they look like. And within 6 months, you would think they lived here, in America. And I'm going, wait a minute, that box costs less than $8, and they're eating, every month. But another company wants $20, and it takes them 6 months to get them to the same spot. It doesn't make sense. And I'm saying, why can't we take the time that's in front of us and invest it and glorify the Lord and share the good news with those that we come across? And if we see things like that, we can bring it to our friends, our peers' attention, and saying, look at some of the inconsistencies that are out there, but here's something that's constant that we can always reflect and go back to. And then as I was reading Ecclesiastes, I went over to chapter number 12. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years approach when you say, I find no pleasure in them, before the sun and the light, and the moon and the stars grow dark, and the clouds return after the rain, when the keeper of the house trembles, and the strong men stoop when their grinders cease, because they are few, and those looking through the windows grow dim, and the doors of the street close, and the sound of the grinding fades, when people rise up at the sound of the birds, and where their songs grow faint, when people are afraid of the heights and the dangers of the streets, and when the almond trees blossom and the grasshoppers drags itself along, and the desire is no longer stirred, then people go to their eternal home, and the mourners go about their streets. Remember him before the silver cord is severed, the golden bowl is broken, before the pitcher is shattered at the spring, and the wheel broken at the well, and the dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is meaningless. For not only was the teacher wise, but he was also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teachers searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like gourds they're collected, staying firmly embedded, nailed, given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Now all has been heard here, and in the conclusion of this matter, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it's good or evil. So as we can reflect in Matthew 28, Christ gave us the commission to go out and teach his word and share it. That's our charge. So if anything from the time we've spent together this evening, my ask, and maybe you could reflect, is what are you going to do with your time? Not just here this evening, but throughout the week. Are you going to celebrate and share with somebody you may come across? Like, everything's in God's hands. Christ has a message. You'll have to decide on the timing and how you present that. Are you going to stand up and say, if somebody says to you, hey, you have a great smile on your face. Well, it's only there because I'm happy because I'm a Christian. That might generate some dialogue. They might come back and say, well, I'm a Christian too. Well, that's fantastic. But you never know when that seed is going to take place. And we have a charge to be like the sower. Our job is just to cast the seed and leave it in God's hands when it takes hold or when it roots. The first time it may hit solid ground. The second time it may start to sprout and it may wither. But the next time it may hold and be in fertile ground. And that's the greatest joy that any of us can receive, is by seeing more and more people accept the good news and be added to the church. So as we come to a close here, one last thing I would like you to think about. We have less people here tonight, but this came to mind also with our time. And this is something that I have to reflect on myself. But when I'm sitting on this side on Sunday mornings, I look across, I'm like, oh, congregation's quite full. Look across, there's about 120, 150, saints here attending. That's fantastic. But then I'm ashamed of myself because of the time that I've been here. I don't know all the people over here. I don't even know their first name. I can see their face, and I wave and I smile. We nod. Guess it's better than nothing. But I don't know their names. And they probably look at me and do the same thing back. Or I could just look at the people from this side to this row and say, I know some of them, but I don't know all their names 100%. So ask yourself, are you in that same situation? We all come in, we find our seat section. Pretty much 99% of the time we have our seat section and we look and go, make sure nobody's in it. But do we know people outside of our seat section? Do we know people outside of maybe Travis who's standing there, passing out the communion cups? Or more than Brian who opens up the door, or Ryan who opens up the other door, or maybe Matt and Glenn in the auditorium? If you look around right now, can you say, I know everybody who's in the auditorium? You know everybody's name. We'll just start with first names. Let's keep it simple. If you're younger, you might know people by their last name. That's how I grew up. Never knew older people's first names. It was just always Mr. and Mrs. But those that are here, you might know them front ways and back ways. But that could be a start. Just with us here, taking the time we have to get to know each other better, at least recognizing and appreciating each other and saying, it's great to see you once again in the time that's allotted to us. With that being said, anytime we gather together, Christ says he's with us. And he always extends an invitation. His arms is wide open because he loves us all. And the time that we have, he knows it's precious and he knows it's temporary because the ultimate goal is to get to heaven. So if you've been studying or if you have needs from the prayers from the church, we're here for you. But if you've been studying the book or the Bible and you believe that Jesus is the Son of God and you're ready to stand forward and repent and say, I'm willing to turn away from those things that keeps me from God and confess his name, as we saw this morning and celebrated, the brother getting baptized. The baptism is ready. We're ready for you, and we would like to add you to the church so you can enjoy that greatest gift of all, is being in God's family and making heaven your home. So at this time, Steve, if you can